Let's continue with imperfect markets. In this lesson, I will focus on monopolies. Now, if we look at a graphical representation of the different market structures, you will see that the monopoly is the furthest removed from your perfect competitor. We can almost go as far as to say that they are opposites of one another. And in between, we have the other two imperfect market structures, your monopolistic competitor. And please remember, even though this seems like monopoly, it has absolutely nothing to do with monopoly. The monopolistic competitor has a lot more characteristics of the perfect competitor, and the oligopoly, which has many of the characteristics of our monopoly. But we will focus on them a little bit later. Now, before we jump into the graphs, I want to show you the income and revenue tables again, just so that you understand the difference between the imperfect and the perfect markets better. You will see that the price looks different for your imperfect market. When we did our perfect markets, we saw that the price remained stable, horizontal line, an elastic demand curve. But for our imperfect markets, we have the normal downward sloping demand curve. If you want to increase the quantity of the product that consumers buy from your business, you will have to decrease the price of your product. I want to quickly use an example of coffee. If coffee is sold for 140 rands a bottle, your mother is probably going to pick up one bottle when she goes grocery shopping. But if coffee retailers decrease their price to, let's say, 79 rands per bottle of coffee, then your mother will probably buy 2 or 3, maybe even 4 bottles. And this is the strategy that all businesses in the imperfect market use. In order to get consumers to purchase more of their product, they have to decrease the price of their product. So let's look at our total revenue. If the price is too high for consumers, they will just not purchase your product, and that means your total revenue will be nothing. At a price of 20 rands per unit, your revenue will be 1 times 20, 20 rand. If you decrease your price to 18 rand, people will buy 2, and in the process, you increase your revenue to 36 rand. And this continues for your 3rd unit, 4th, 5th, and 6th units as well. So this is what our total revenue curve looks like. As we decrease the price of our product, our revenue will increase up to a certain point. And then you will see from the 7th unit, 8th unit, 9th unit onwards, your revenue will actually start decreasing. When you sold your 5th unit at a price of 12 rand each, you made 60 rand. And then you sold your 6th unit, you increased it, but your revenue didn't really increase. Your revenue stayed exactly the same. Would you decrease your price further to encourage consumers to buy more? Logically, that just would not make sense, because why would you sell a product at a lower price and get less money for it? So that is why our total revenue curve has this shape represented over here. For average revenue, this is your demand curve for your imperfect market. You are going to look what you get per unit in revenue. So if your price is 20 rand and you sell 1 unit, your total revenue is 20. But on average, what do you earn per unit sold? And that is your price. Or then total revenue divided by quantity. If we have a total revenue of 56 rand and we want to know, okay, but how much did we receive per unit on average? We take total revenue divided by quantity, and this gives us our average revenue of 14 Rand per unit. Now, this is the market price for the monopolist because he is the only business selling this specific product. Marginal revenue. Your marginal revenue looks at the change in revenue that occurred with the change in the quantity that you sold. So remember, for these two, we don't have any answers because you're not allowed to divide by 0. And because our quantity increased by 1 unit every time, we are just going to divide by 1. So how much did our total revenue change? From selling nothing to our first unit led to a 20 Rand change in revenue. So marginal revenue is 20 Rand. When we sold our second unit, total revenue increased from 20 Rand to 36 Rand. That means our total revenue changed by 16 Rand. From the second to the third unit, there was a change of 12 Rand. From our third to our fourth unit, there was a change of 8 Rand. Then there was a change of 4 Rand. And lastly, from the fifth to the sixth unit, we did not incur any additional revenue. So our marginal revenue is 0. So here we have our average revenue, which is our demand curve, and our marginal revenue, which lies below our average revenue. They both start at 20 because for the first unit, your average revenue is equal to your marginal revenue. So they start at exactly the same point. But then you will see that AR decreases more slowly than MR. Every time we adjusted our average revenue by increments of 2. There's a 2 Rand change between these. So this one changes in increments of 2. Whereas if we look at the marginal revenue, it decreased in increments of 4 every time. So it decreased twice as fast as our average revenue. And that is why it also has a steeper gradient. This will continue. And it is actually very possible for your MR to fall below 0. Just for interest's sake, let me show you this. The moment your MR curve intersects with your x-axis and becomes negative, this is also your point where your total revenue curve starts to decrease. So, increasing the quantity by decreasing your price leads to an increase in revenue all the way up until your marginal revenue reaches your x-axis or is 0. The moment your marginal revenue turns negative, your total revenue will start to decrease. And this point over here, we call our revenue maximizing point. Beyond this point, beyond this quantity, the business will decrease the revenue that they receive. Our average cost did not change from that of the perfect market. So we continue on exactly the same. Total cost per quantity, average cost, total cost divided by quantity. Average cost will decrease up to a certain point, and then as you start increasing your variable cost, or you have to increase your fixed capital or your laborers, you are going to start increasing your cost per unit again. Marginal cost. How much did your total cost change from producing one unit to the next? It remains exactly the same shape, your Nike shape. It starts high, it decreases to a certain point, and then starts increasing very fast. Now let's go and look at the characteristics of our monopoly. First of all, they are the only sellers in the market. There are barriers to entry, so it is completely blocked. Nobody else can enter into this market. Now, your barriers to entry can be either natural or it can be artificial. Very important for you to understand that a natural monopoly is due to high development cost. And because it costs so much money to actually start this business, others can't enter into the market because they don't have that type of money. Or you have your artificial monopoly. Now, this is when your barriers are not economic of nature, but let's say rather protected legally by a patent. So other people can't enter into the market because a specific producer has the sole right to produce that product for a certain time. Your next characteristic is the fact that your monopolist is a price maker. They change the quantity that they supply in order to influence the price. There are no close substitutes available for this product. So consumers don't really have a choice when it comes to the consumption of this product. It's this or it's nothing. There is no competition in this market. The product is unique. And it has a downward sloping demand curve, which I showed to you already when we did the revenue table. And last but not least, it is actually possible for the monopolist to make an economic profit in the long run. They do not face any competition whatsoever. Nobody is going to enter into the market to take away some of the market share because entry is completely blocked. And therefore, they can continue to make an economic profit as long as they want. Now you have to explain the downward slope of the demand curve for your monopolist. We already started to look at this. Remember, your average revenue curve is your demand curve for the monopolist. So although the monopolist makes their own prices, they limit the quantity that they provide. If I can just show you here. If I produce a few products, I can charge a higher price than, for example, producing a few at a lower price, or a lot at a lower price. So the monopolist looks at the quantity and then they decide to produce at a lower quantity so that they can charge a higher price. They cannot control both the price and the quantity because the law of demand still applies. They can't charge excessively high prices because remember, consumers still have limited disposable income with which they have to purchase these goods. And if prices are absolutely ridiculous, they just rather go without it. The law of demand states that the higher the price, the lower the quantity that will be demanded. And the monopolist chooses the combination of the price and quantity that suits it best. The demand curve of the monopolist is downward sloping. It is the market demand curve, and since they are the only company responsible for the entire output of the industry, this also represents the market price. Now, I know we already did this one, but I want to recap the AR and MR. You will see that they start at exactly the same point. And once marginal revenue starts decreasing, average revenue starts decreasing, so will your marginal revenue. Average revenue does not change as fast as marginal revenue does. And from the 7th unit, you will see that your total revenue actually starts decreasing. So this basically means that this is our 7th unit, or our 6th unit. From our 7th unit onwards, our total revenue will start decreasing. So what is our relationship between the average revenue and marginal revenue curves? The monopolist wishes to increase its sales to an additional unit, and therefore it has to decrease the price of their product. So the lower the price, it means all customers have to pay the lower price for every single product. They're not going to price discriminate and have some people pay a high price and other people pay a low price. Your marginal revenue, like I already stated, is the amount by which your total revenue increases by selling an additional unit, and it will be less than the price that you actually charge. Your marginal revenue and demand curves are not the same. Your marginal revenue curve will always lie below your demand curve or your average revenue curve. Where is the profit maximization point of your monopolist? Now, for all of microeconomics, this stays exactly the same. Your profit maximization point is the point where your marginal cost, snide curve, intersects with your marginal revenue curve. So this point is your profit maximization point. Remember, and this is where it becomes a little complicated. You do not sell on your marginal revenue curve. You sell on your demand curve. But you have already established that you are going to sell this quantity because this is your profit maximization point. So you extend this line upwards until you reach your demand curve over here. And this is the price at which you are going to sell your product. The thing is, as you will see with the other notes that I added on the classroom for you, is that as long as your cost over here for producing each additional unit lies below the revenue that you earn for producing or selling one additional unit, it makes sense to continue. So anywhere where your revenue per unit exceeds your cost per unit, you are still making a profit up to this point. From this point forwards, your costs start exceeding your revenue, and that doesn't make sense in any business. So you are going to stop producing at this quantity. What is the difference between an economic profit and a normal profit? We look at this curve over here. You have your marginal revenue curve lying below your average revenue curve. You have your marginal cost curve. You look at the point where MC intersects with MR. This is my profit maximization point. Sorry, I went back instead of ahead. My profit maximization point. I do not sell here. I have to move up to my average revenue curve. So I am going to sell at my SP selling price over here. My average cost curve lies below my average revenue curve at this point. And this point is what it costs me to produce this quantity. And the difference between the cost price and the selling price is my profit. And this area represented over here is my total economic profit. Let's look at our normal profit. Now over here, we still start with our profit maximization point over there, where MC equals MR. That is not our selling price, so we extend the line upwards until we reach our AR curve. This is the price at which we sell our product. And evidently, at this quantity, this is also the cost of producing this amount of the product. And therefore, the moment your AC is equal to your AR, you make a normal profit. And there you have your two curves next to each other so that you can see you make an economic profit when your average cost curve lies below your average revenue curve at the point of profit maximization. you make a normal profit if your average cost is equal to your average revenue at the profit maximization point. And when do you make an economic loss? This is when at your profit maximization point, the revenue that you earn is less than what it actually costs you to produce this product. And please remember that even a monopolist can't sustain an economic loss in the long run. They can only make an economic loss in the short run, after which they will decide to close down their business and try something else. So good luck, and I'll see you for your monopolistic competitor a little bit later.